My name is Evelyn Hart. I'm 38 years old. Last Tuesday, I filed for divorce. 3 years of marriage, 6 years together, and it ended in our kitchen with my husband laughing at me like I'd just told the world's funniest joke. You can't divorce me, Jason said, actually wiping a tear of laughter from the corner of his eye. My dad owns this town, Evie. Good luck finding a lawyer who'll touch you once he's done making calls. I didn't bother arguing. I just handed him the envelope. Already filed, I said. You've been served. His smile stopped in the middle like someone cut the power. The laughter drained from his face. You're bluffing. He snatched the papers from my hand and started reading, eyes scanning quickly, jaw tightening. When he reached the bottom and saw the firm name, he actually gave a short, disbelieving scoff. Thompson? That's who you hired? He looked almost relieved. He's third rate. Dad will crush him. Maybe he would have, I said, leaning back against the counter, if he wasn't currently under federal indictment. Jason froze. For what? He asked. Wire fraud, securities violations, 15-year scheme. The FBI raided his office yesterday morning. All his accounts are frozen. They denied bail, flight risk, and all that. The color left his face so fast it was almost impressive. You're lying. I pulled my phone out of my pocket and tapped the screen. The article I'd kept open glowed between us. Local business titan under investigation. Assets seized pending trial. The photo was unmistakable. His father in a suit, looking confident and smug in a headshot taken back when he still believed he was untouchable. Published 6 hours ago. Jason stared at the screen, then at me, then back at the screen. His fingers tightened around the crumpled divorce papers. This doesn't change anything. He'll fix it. He can't even afford his own legal defense right now, I said quietly. Court appointed him a public defender this afternoon. That's in the article too, if you scroll. That's not... He shook his head. You're making this up. Call him, I said. Ask him yourself. He tried once, straight to voicemail. He tried again, same thing. By the third attempt, his hand was shaking just enough for me to notice. He's probably just busy with lawyers, Jason muttered. Busy, yes, I said, with federal marshals. What I didn't tell him was that I'd known something was coming 2 weeks earlier. A friend of mine, someone who works in the federal courthouse, had texted me out of the blue. Can't give details, the message had said, but sealed indictment. Your father-in-law's name is on it. Timing might matter for whatever you've been thinking about. I'd been thinking about leaving Jason for over a year. I just hadn't had the right opening yet. When you're married to the golden son of a man who owns half the commercial buildings in your city and golfs with the mayor, you don't file lightly. His family doesn't just fight back. They annihilate. But indictments change things. Frozen assets change things. The fall of a king weakens his knights and princes. Jason stumbled back a step, dropping the papers onto the counter. You planned this, he said, voice low. You waited until my family was vulnerable, like some vulture. I waited until your father couldn't buy the outcome, I said. There's a difference. He glared at me. You ungrateful. Everything you have is because of us. I almost laughed. Everything I have is because I worked for it before I ever met you. That wasn't always how I felt. When we met, I thought I'd hit the jackpot. Jason was charming, funny, rich in that easy, careless way of people who've never had to check a balance before swiping a card. His father sat on every important board in town, owned several office parks, and was treated like royalty at fundraisers. When Jason asked me to marry him, part of me relaxed in a way I didn't want to admit to anyone. Financial security, good connections, a family that didn't have to worry about bills. I grew up watching my parents stress over every doctor's appointment. The idea of never doing mental math at a pharmacy again was seductive. What I didn't realize was that marrying into Jason's family meant I'd stop being a person and start being an accessory. You'll work for my dad's company, Jason told me a month after the wedding, like he was telling me what we were having for dinner. He's setting up a position for you. I have a job, I reminded him. Engineering firm. Good pay. Actual projects. This pays better, he said. And it's family. It's about being part of the legacy. The position turned out to be less engineering lead and more personal assistant with an inflated title, picking up his father's dry cleaning, scheduling his lunches, driving him to meetings where he'd introduce me as my son's wife and forget I had a degree that required 4 years of calculus. I started my days drafting project proposals and ended them fetching coffee. My engineering license hung in a frame over our living room desk, collecting dust. It's temporary, Jason kept saying whenever I complained. Dad just needs to see you're reliable. Once he trusts you, he'll put you in charge of something big. 3 years later, I was still reliable. The only thing that had gotten bigger was the pile of urgent personal errands on my desk. But the job wasn't the worst part. It was Jason's attitude. Can you pick up groceries on your way home? I asked him once, 6 months ago, after a 12-hour day of corralling his father's calendar. He didn't look up from his game. That's not my job. I'm slammed, I said. You pass the store. You work for my family, he said, thumbs tapping, which means you work for me. Groceries are on your route. It took me a moment to realize he wasn't joking. That's how it became. Everything I did was an obligation. Everything he did was a favor. If I pushed back, he'd shrug and say, "Don't make me talk to Dad about your attitude problem." Last month, we'd had dinner at his parents' house. The four of us sat at a table big enough to seat 10, his father at the head, like some feudal lord surveying his holdings. At one point, he raised his glass and said, "Jason got lucky marrying into this family, huh?" I laughed nervously, assuming he was joking. Jason didn't correct him. "Actually," Jason said, "Evie did pretty well for herself. What would she be without us?" He laughed. His parents laughed. Something in me snapped. "An engineer making 6 figures," I said, setting my fork down, "instead of being your personal servant." The laughter died mid-breath. His father's face went red. Jason's eyes went cold. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," I said. My hands were shaking under the table, but my voice came out steady. "I'm done being your assistant. I'm done being punished for not being born with your last name." "You're done when I say you're done," his father said, voice like a slammed door. "Or would you like to see how hard life gets when I make a few calls?" That was the threat that changed everything. Not the words themselves, but the way Jason looked at me when his father said them. Not shocked, not protective, not even conflicted. Just amused, like I was a child throwing a tantrum. The next day I found Thompson. Now, in our kitchen, with indictments on the news, and his black card declining for the first time in his life, Jason stared at me as if I'd orchestrated the FBI raid myself. "Who are you?" he whispered again, as if I'd been replaced by a stranger. I picked up the papers he'd dropped and slid them back across the counter. "Someone who got tired," I said, "of being owned." Jason didn't move for a long time. He stood in the middle of the kitchen in his expensive dress shirt and bare feet, divorce papers splayed on the counter like a crime scene map. For the first time since I'd known him, his confidence had a crack in it wide enough to see through. "You're overreacting," he said finally, grabbing onto the first excuse he could reach. "We were just going through a rough patch. You don't blow up a marriage over a few comments." "A few comments?" I repeated, arching an eyebrow. "Telling me I work for you? Having your father threaten my entire career because I dared to talk back?" He scoffed. "You're twisting things. Dad didn't mean anything by it. He was just reminding me that he could ruin my life if I didn't obey," I supplied. "Sure." He slammed his hand on the counter. "He gave you a job." "He gave me a leash," I shot back. "There's a difference." His jaw tightened. "You're ungrateful." "That's your mother's line," I said. "You should tell her I beat her to it." He stared at me in silence. I could see the gears turning behind his eyes, recalibrating. Jason always recalibrated. It's what people do when their usual tricks stop working. Later that night, his mom called. I saw her name flash on my phone, Marianne, with the little rose emoji she insisted I add when we got married. I almost let it go to voicemail. Almost. I picked up. "How dare you," she said, skipping hello. Her voice was tight in that way rich women's voices get when the world isn't matching their expectations. "Nice to hear from you too," I said. "How could you hurt us like this?" she demanded. "Your father-in-law is under attack and you're filing for divorce?" "Your husband is under indictment for fraud," I said calmly. "The government isn't attacking him. They're doing their job." "You don't understand how these things work," she snapped. "Competitors, jealous people, ambitious prosecutors, you have to stand by and weather the storm. That's what family does." "For whom?" I asked. "Because when I was the one drowning under your husband's demands, you didn't see a storm. You saw free labor." "Evelyn," she said sharply, "we took you in." I laughed. "I was 32 and self-supporting when I married your son. You didn't take me in. You absorbed me into an unpaid support staff." "You are selfish," she hissed. "Selfish and disloyal after everything we've given you." "Marianne," I interrupted, "you didn't give me anything I couldn't earn myself. What you tried to take was my independence." She inhaled sharply. "My daughter," she said, voice warming with manufactured pity, "is too good for you." "She's not your daughter," I said. "She's your son. And if he's too good for me, then this divorce should be the best thing that ever happened to him." I hung up before she could reply. Forward 3 days. Denial had graduated to rage. You planned this, Jason accused me on Wednesday night, pacing the now slightly emptier living room. His family had already claimed a few heirloom items I'd never seen before. You knew about my dad, and you waited like some kind of vulture. I knew an investigation was happening, I said. I didn't know when the indictment would drop. Bullshit, he snapped. You timed this. Of course I did, I said. I waited until he couldn't use his influence to bury me. You're disgusting, he said quietly. I don't even recognize you. That's because you've only ever recognized the version of me that made your life easier, I said. We stood there in tense silence. The TV droned in the background about local real estate titan faces multiple charges, complete with footage of his father being escorted into a courthouse. The government is just jealous of successful people, Jason muttered, glaring at the screen. Successful people don't have to steal pension funds and cook books for 15 years, I replied. He whipped his head toward me. You don't know anything about his business. I know a federal case when I see one, I said, and they don't move until they're sure they can win. He walked out, slamming the door so hard the window rattled. When narcissistic confidence collapses, it doesn't go quietly. It goes to war. Jason's first attack was classic. Smear the one walking away. On Thursday, my old boss from the engineering firm I'd left 3 years earlier called. Evelyn, he said, sounding bemused. I just got a very interesting phone call from your husband. I sighed. Let me guess. He said I was unstable and making threats. So you've heard his speech? My boss chuckled. He called HR too. Said we should keep a close eye on you. I'm sorry, I said. We're getting divorced. He's not handling it well, and he's very used to people believing whatever he says. I figured, my boss replied. I told him you haven't worked here in years, and even when you did, the only threat you ever made was to quit if we kept scheduling 7 a.m. meetings. I laughed for real that time. That tracks. If he calls back, we'll log it as harassment, he added. You okay otherwise? Getting there, I said. Thanks for calling me. He wished me luck. I hung up. Jason had landed 0 hits. But he wasn't done swinging. I moved out the day after filing, packed what I could fit in my car, left the rest, and drove across town to a tiny studio apartment I'd kept from before the marriage. I hadn't moved out of it when we married, at Jason's insistence. Just in case, he'd said back then. You never know if we might need a backup place. Ironically, he was right. He just didn't think I'd be the one using it. The lease was in my name only. Always had been. When I'd suggested adding him, his father had waved it off. No need, he'd said. You'll be living in one of our properties soon enough. Thank God for slow-moving old men. The first night in the studio felt surreal. No marble countertops, no art I didn't pick, no sound of Jason's footsteps. Just me, a mattress, a second-hand table, and a microwave that made a weird buzzing sound when you heated anything over 2 minutes. It felt like breathing fresh air after years in a scented cage. Jason didn't see it that way. He started showing up. Bang, bang, bang. On the door, at 10 p.m., at midnight, at 6 in the morning. Evelyn, open the door, he'd shout. We need to talk. Talk through our lawyers, I'd answer. Stop being childish, let me in. This isn't your home, I'd reply. Your name isn't on the lease. This is our marital residence, he'd argue. No, I'd say. This was my residence before I made the mistake of moving into yours. The neighbors complained. Building management sent notices. Finally, I had to warn him I'd call the police and pursue trespassing charges. He backed off, but not before shouting, "You'll regret this!" loud enough for everyone on my floor to hear. I already regretted marrying him. That's when he went from theatrical to dangerous. Monday, I got pulled over on my way to work. Standard traffic stop, I assumed. I hadn't been speeding. I rolled down the window and handed over my license and registration. The officer took them, went back to his car. 5 minutes passed, then 10, then a second patrol car pulled up. My stomach sank. The first officer returned, now with a second beside him. Ma'am, he said, we received a report that you've been threatening someone. We need to ask you a few questions. Let me guess, I said. Jason Hart? They exchanged a look. He filed a report stating you've been sending threatening messages and showing up at his residence to harass him, the second officer said. I moved out, I replied. He's the one who's been showing up at my door. I haven't contacted him except through my attorney. Can you prove that? Doorbell cameras are a gift from God. I pulled up the footage on my phone. There, in crisp HD, was Jason pounding on my door, shouting, "Open up!" Me telling him to leave through the intercom, timestamps clearly showing the dates and times. They watched for a minute. One of them sighed. Looks like we got fed a story, he said. Apologies for the inconvenience, ma'am. We'll be following up with Mr. Hart about filing a false report. Thank you, I said. My hands were trembling slightly, but it wasn't fear, it was anger. Weaponizing the police is not just petty, it's dangerous. By the time I got to work, HR had already emailed asking to chat. I sat down with the HR manager and laid everything out. The divorce, Jason's retaliation, the false report, the doorbell footage, the body cam the officers had provided me. She listened, brows furrowed, then nodded. We'll make a note in your file, she said. If he or anyone else calls about you, we'll route it through legal. I nodded. Jason wasn't damaging me. He was building my case. 2 days later, he found a way to hit my wallet. Literally. One of my clients called. Hey, Evelyn. Just wanted to let you know I got a strange call from someone claiming to be your husband. Said you'd been mentally off lately and they were worried about your work. I closed my eyes. Let me guess. He wanted to know if you'd considered replacing me. Pretty much, the client said. Told him we were happy with your work and ended the call, but heads up, he might contact others. He did. He got one contract canceled before I could warn them. That hurt. I called Thompson. She's interfering with my livelihood, I said. He is. They are. All of them. Good, he replied. Good? I repeated. Every stunt he pulls makes him look worse and you look more reasonable, Thompson said. Document everything. We're filing for a restraining order, and every minute he harasses you is a minute he's not preparing a coherent case. He paused. And Evelyn? Yeah? You're doing great. Don't let their noise convince you otherwise. I hung up, printed out emails, saved call logs, pulled footage, and made folders. Jason thought he was scaring me off. All he was doing was handing me ammunition. By the end of the month, he'd emptied a small joint savings account we'd barely used. $8,000 gone in one day. He'd also sent movers to our old apartment and stripped it bare while I was at work. Furniture, dishes, decorations, even the ugly lamp his mother loved. When I opened the door that night, the place was hollow. She even took the toilet paper, I thought, staring at the empty holder. Petty, pointless, and so useful. Every petty theft, every false accusation, every tantrum was a line in Thompson's file. Let him keep going, Thompson said over the phone. He's doing our job for us. The next envelope I opened wasn't from Jason. It was from the court. Restraining order hearing, 1 week. For the first time in months, I slept soundly. The courthouse waiting area was cold enough to qualify as cryogenic storage. I sat in one of those hard plastic chairs designed specifically to remind you that comfort is not part of the judicial experience. Thompson arrived beside me, crisp suit, calm eyes, a man who ate entitled spouses for breakfast. Jason showed up 10 minutes late. He wasn't alone. Trailing behind him was his new attorney, a man I recognized immediately, his father's criminal defense lawyer. Dark suit, gray hair, tired eyes, the expression of someone who regretted every decision that led him to this exact moment. Jason, meanwhile, strutted like he was walking into a family reunion instead of a restraining order hearing. When he saw me, he smirked. That alone almost justified the entire proceeding. We were called in. Jason's lawyer tried opening statements first. Your Honor, he began, voice grave. My client is simply attempting to reconcile with his wife. The petitioner has overreacted due to stress caused by my client's father's legal issues. The judge didn't even blink. Thompson leaned forward. Your Honor, here is footage of the defendant pounding on the petitioner's door at midnight, refusing to leave, violating apartment policies, and causing multiple complaints from neighbors. The judge watched the 30-second clip in silence, Jason screaming, Evelyn, open the door, while I calmly repeated that he needed to leave. Jason's lawyer cleared his throat. There may have been emotional distress. Thompson slid another file across the desk. Additionally, here is the police body cam footage detailing the defendant's false report alleging threats. The officers concluded it was fabricated. The judge watched that one too. Jason sank lower in his seat. And here, Thompson said, stacking a third set of documents, are the HR records, the client affidavits, the email logs of him attempting to sabotage the petitioner's employment, and documentation of him emptying the joint account and removing shared property during an active divorce proceeding. Jason's lawyer opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. My client, he began softly. The judge cut him off. The evidence is clear. Jason straightened, indignant. Your Honor, I just wanted to talk to my wife. She abandoned me. You were served divorce papers at your residence, the judge said. That is not abandonment. That is due legal process. Jason's voice cracked. I'm going through a lot right now. My father is in jail. My mother is hysterical. I have nowhere to go. You are an adult, the judge said firmly. You can seek employment and housing as all adults do. Being served with a restraining order is not a personal tragedy. It is a consequence. Jason blinked rapidly. Actual tears. The first real ones I'd seen. For the record, the judge continued, you have repeatedly interfered with the petitioner's livelihood, attempted to intimidate her, made false allegations, and created an unstable environment. The restraining order is granted. Jason inhaled sharply, his lawyer deflated like a punctured tire. The judge wasn't done. You are prohibited from contacting the petitioner directly or indirectly, from approaching her workplace or residence, and from interfering with her business relationships. Any violation will result in immediate arrest. Jason whispered, "This is insane." What is insane, the judge said evenly, is believing you can weaponize the system against your spouse without consequences. Case closed. Jason glared at me on his way out, forced to remain 500 feet away by court order. He hissed across the corridor, "This isn't over. Dad's going to beat these charges, and when he does—" "He won't," I said calmly, not bothering to raise my voice. 17 witnesses, years of forensic audits. He's not getting out of this. Jason froze, because he knew I was right. For the first time in years, I felt something unexpected rising inside me. Relief. 2 days later, Thompson and I sat in his office preparing for the next battle, the preliminary divorce hearing. It would decide temporary support, asset access, and financial responsibilities until the final decree. "Are you ready for this?" he asked. "Yes," I said, and I was. I slid a folder across his desk. He opened it, blinked. "Where did you get all this?" he asked. "I was his father's glorified assistant for 3 years," I said. People talk. They forget I'm in the room. They forget I read emails, schedule meetings, see expense reports. Inside the folder, evidence of Jason arranging a no-show job for a friend, using company funds for 18 months. Receipts of home decor bought using company credit disguised as office renovations. Emails where Jason bragged about never needing to work because Daddy takes care of everything. Screenshots of him calling me the future stay-at-home wife to friends, mocking my degree. A detailed record of all the hours I worked filing documents, scheduling, driving, assisting, none of which he paid me for. Thompson exhaled slowly. A rare smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Oh, Evelyn," he said softly, "we're going to bury him." The temporary orders hearing was set for the following week. Jason arrived with his new lawyer, not the criminal defense one, who'd abandoned him, but a kid who looked like he'd just graduated law school and still smelled faintly of textbooks. "Your Honor," the baby-faced attorney said, "my client requests temporary spousal support of $4,000 a month to maintain the lifestyle he is accustomed to." The judge looked at him like he'd just proposed marriage. Thompson stood. "Your Honor, the defendant has not worked in 6 years. He lived off his family wealth, misused company funds, and pressured the petitioner to give up her engineering career. We have documented evidence that the defendant's standard of living was solely funded by fraudulently obtained family resources." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Is this accurate?" The young attorney shuffled papers. "My client supported his wife emotionally while she focused on her career." "She gave up her career," Thompson interjected, "at his and his father's insistence, and here are the emails proving it." He handed the judge the folder. Jason's face drained of color fast enough to be medically concerning. The judge read for a long minute. A long, painful, excruciating minute for Jason. Then he said, "Temporary support is denied. The defendant is advised to seek immediate employment. This court is not in the business of maintaining luxury lifestyles." Jason's mouth fell open. Thompson nodded, satisfied. We left the courtroom with the first truly decisive win. Jason stormed out 30 seconds later, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the frame. I didn't look back. 3 days later, another email from Thompson. "Good news," he wrote. "Her father's attorney officially resigned from representing Jason. Conflict of interest. Translation, they can't afford it." Now Jason had nothing. No father's money, no family lawyer, no credibility, no power, and no leverage. But I wasn't done. Not yet. Because sometimes justice isn't just leaving. Sometimes it's leaving, thriving, and making sure every part of your exit is airtight. Everything Jason and his family took from me, they were about to pay back. Line by line. Dollar by dollar. In court. Divorce court has a smell. People don't talk about it, but it does. A mix of burnt coffee, old paper, cheap floral perfume, and fear. Fear is the strongest note. Jason reeked of it. He showed up to the next hearing in a wrinkled blazer that didn't quite fit, with the young attorney trailing behind him like a deer shoved into traffic. His hair wasn't styled, his eyes were swollen. He'd lost weight. His confidence, once so thick it practically fogged a room, had thinned into something translucent. I almost felt bad. Almost. Thompson leaned over as Jason sat across from us. "He looks terrible," he whispered. "Consequences usually do," I replied. The judge entered, and everyone rose. The hearing began. This wasn't the final decree yet, but it was the big one, the division of assets, repayment of what Jason stole from the apartment, and the matter of his $8,000 withdrawal from the joint savings. Jason's attorney stood. "Your Honor, my client requests alimony to help him transition back into the workforce, as well as immediate access to marital assets." Thompson actually smiled. Smiled. I'd seen him smile maybe twice in 2 months. "Your Honor," he said, rising, "we'd like to present Exhibit A." He handed the judge the thick binder, the one filled with Jason's own emails, receipts, and messages. Jason paled visibly. The judge flipped through, page after page, emails bragging about never working, evidence of company funds used for personal luxuries, screenshots of Jason mocking me for having a degree I would never use, because I'd soon be a full-time Hart family ornament. The judge's brows lifted, expression sharpening. Then came the best part. "Thompson, and Exhibit B." He placed a USB drive on the table. "That," Thompson continued, "contains time-stamped video of the defendant removing marital property from the residence during active divorce proceedings. You'll notice he took everything except the drywall." Jason's lawyer sputtered. "Your Honor, my client simply took what was his." "He took the toilet paper," Thompson said. That got a snort from the court reporter. The judge folded his hands. "Mr. Hart, did you empty the apartment?" Jason swallowed. "I took what was mine." "All of it?" the judge asked. Jason shrugged helplessly. "I panicked." Panic, an excellent legal defense when you're 12, not so much at 35. The judge turned to Thompson. "And the financial withdrawal?" $8,000, Thompson said, "taken without consent. We request repayment plus reimbursement for property removal." The judge made a note. "Understood." Jason looked like he wanted to sink through the floor. Then the judge addressed him directly. "Mr. Hart," he said, "you have presented no evidence of financial need, no proof of career sacrifice, and ample evidence of intentional disruption. You are not entitled to alimony. You will repay the $8,000 withdrawn, as well as the value of the property taken." Jason's mouth dropped open. "But additionally," the judge continued, "as you remove the majority of furnishings from the marital apartment, you are responsible for their replacement cost. A repayment schedule will be established." Jason tried again. "This is unfair." "No," the judge said firmly. "This is equitable." Jason shut his mouth. Thompson leaned back, satisfied. He didn't say it out loud, but the look on his face said, "Checkmate." Afterward, in the hallway, Jason hovered near the far wall like a ghost trapped outside his own life. He was forced to keep distance because of the restraining order, but he watched me like he was waiting for me to say something. I didn't. Not until he spoke first. "You ruined everything," he said, voice cracking. I turned to him. "No, Jason," I said softly. "I just stopped letting you ruin me." His face twisted. "We used to be happy." "No," I corrected. "You were comfortable. I was useful." He couldn't argue. He didn't even try. Behind him, his lawyer handed him papers, clearly explaining how repayment schedules worked. Jason looked like someone had replaced his blood with ice water. Thompson nudged me. "Ready?" "More than ready." We left the courthouse. Jason didn't follow. 1 week later, Thompson called. "Final decree is ready," he said. "It's remarkably clean. No alimony, no shared assets owed. Jason's repayment locked at $200 a month for 5 years. He pays his own legal fees. I keep everything that was mine before the marriage. He keeps the car in his father's name, soon to be seized by federal authorities." I signed, he signed. It was over. Except not quite, because life had one more twist waiting. A month later, Jason's father's trial began. It was televised. Every channel, every headline. 17 witnesses, dozens of victims, shredded documents, falsified accounts, wire transfers routed through shell companies. Jason's mother sat in the gallery, shaking. Jason wasn't allowed near me, but I knew from gossip that he was falling apart. Their entire empire, every illusion of power, was stripped clean by federal attorneys who didn't care about last names or country club clout. 3 weeks later, guilty, 14 counts, sentenced to 12 years federal. His mother was charged shortly after as an accomplice. 5 years. Their real estate holdings? Seized, auctioned, returned to victims. Their influence? Gone. Jason? Living with an aunt 2 towns over, working retail, for the first time in his life, earning his own paycheck. One night, I sat in my apartment, my freshly refurnished apartment, on a couch I picked out myself, sipping tea after a long day at my engineering firm. My phone buzzed. Monthly payment received, $200 from J. Hart. I smiled. Not because of the money, because of what I did with the money. Every month, I donated it to a fund for fraud victims, specifically victims of his father's fraud. Jason didn't know, but he'd find out soon. The foundation sends thank you letters. Part of me felt a flicker of pity when I imagined him receiving one. But mostly I felt free. Free in a way I hadn't felt in years. Free in a way money can't buy. Free in a way marriage had stolen. Free in a way justice rarely delivers so cleanly. I got out. I rebuilt my life. And every month, Jason helps me repair the damage his family caused, even if he doesn't know it. Sometimes revenge isn't dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet, steady, consistent. Sometimes revenge looks like a $200 payment that funds healing instead of harm. And sometimes revenge looks like a woman standing on her own again, with her dignity intact, her future wide open, and her past finally behind her.